Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my podcast partner, Richard Spray. Joining us on the panel today, we welcome the Statman Danscape and Raf, the Random Pundit. Coming up, we'll discuss all the latest transfer stories, rumours and headlines as the incomings and outgoings start to take shape for the Reds. And have you ever thought about learning a second language? Because now seems like quite a good time for any of us to take out a Rosetta Stone subscription and start learning Portuguese. Because the next influx from the Amazon is due to land in Nottingham with the arrival of the boys from Brazil.
Cuiabano, chega Rig, sobrou, tem o toque, Igor Jesus! Gol! Do Botafogo! Igor Jesus! Igor Jesus!
É tropical, samba do Brasil, sensacional.
Oh, I got quite carried away then, boys. I got quite carried away. The Samba boys are on their way. Richard Spray, how are we?
Oh, man, are you kidding me? Now I'm even more excited. I just want to hear that every single second of my life now. I want to hear that scream of goal. Well done, man. That was brilliant.
Oh, you're welcome. And Danscape's with us. Dan, how you doing, man?
Yeah, good. I was apprehensive before that because I was waiting on the team retained list. So I was just purely thinking about Big Willie, but now I've got something else to think about having seen that display of passion. Brilliant.
Well, I bought this T-shirt in season 1. Once we signed Felipe and Danilo and things, I thought, oh, that's it. I'm buying a Brazil T-shirt. I've even got number 10 on the back. So this is my ode to our Brazilian contingent, which is going to grow, Raf. It's growing.
Oh my gosh. And do you know what? That intro took me back to as a kid of watching Italian football on, was it Channel 4 or Channel 5 or whatever it was? And just amazing commentary of when goals went in. It's absolutely magical. Absolutely magical. But yeah, hopefully we have played a blinder once again and there's excitement. Who knows what's going to happen? They might be average. They might be all right. They might be absolute gems like Murillo. Who knows? But this is all part of the fun of being part of Forest at the moment and the lottery of these somewhat unknowns of what they might turn out to be.
Absolutely. And we are streaming for the very first time. We've never done it to X. We've always just gone onto YouTube. And so we decided we're going to stream to X as well, just to see what happens. So if you are joining us on either X or YouTube, thank you so much for being with us for this live. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of information coming your way, and we're going to do our very best to keep it as simplified as possible. Don't forget to get involved in the comments. Let us know you're here. We'll give shout outs wherever we can. We've got a lot to pack in. Please do like and subscribe as well. It really helps us no end to get our numbers up. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, and of course, YouTube, all the usual places. Please do like and subscribe as well wherever you can. All right. One thing I want to quickly just jump in before we even get started, because he's my main man this year and he was the player of the season. So look, there's Nikola Milenkovic. He popped out a message on to social media yesterday. The season was full of challenges. Talks about the support of the fans. Talks about feeling the love of all the fans in this historic club. I won't read the whole thing out because I'm sure you've all seen it, but just wanted to acknowledge Nikola Milenkovic again. With all the incomings coming in, let's not forget that 12 months ago, it started another new process of people coming in, and it is a chance or a time of excitement when new players coming in. And one thing I think we can be sure of is that our recruitment team are getting it right a lot of the time. And so we hope that continues, obviously, into this transfer window as well. Right. For those of you that haven't seen a previous episode we did not long ago on Forest's Finances Explained, Raf, who is a regular with us, of course, you perhaps will know by now, is a bit of an expert when it comes to football finances. Raf has developed his own bespoke piece of kit, if you like, software that is going to be potentially going into the industry, hopefully very soon. So Raf's eye on finances is on an expertise level, we say. So we're very lucky to kind of lean into that. And Raf, you want to talk about your spreadsheet. So for those of you that are a little bit spreadsheet weary, don't worry. Raf's going to give us 2 or 3 minutes on how this works. And this is going to kind of link into a lot of the conversations that we're going to have today and in future episodes as well. So Raf, over to you, and I'll pop on the screen your screen. There it is.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, no, brilliant. And you know what? I'm very passionate about this. So I apologise if and this is what the team are here, so dial me back if I get too impassioned and too in the weeds. But I really appreciate those that took the time to read or actually listen to or watch my finance episode, which really described where we are with our PSR. And a little bit of a cheat sheet to bring it back this was the situation of our PSR losses or gains of what we've had for the last 2 years. And again, how we get to the numbers of what we're probably going to be this year. You can check out that finance episode on Talking Reds. It's pinned to the top of my profile. But what we do know is that given what we've got here, we need to, we'll scrape over the line this year. Again, watch the episode. But next year, we probably need to improve our profit position by about 30 million quid to make PSR. Okay. And to that end, what I've created here is a spreadsheet, because I can't really show you the system for IP protection purposes and everything else as well. But this will help our discussions over the next few weeks figure out who's coming in, who's going out, and what does that mean to our bottom line and our profit. Okay. So without getting too technical, there's some really interesting things that happen very, very quickly, just to kind of get you on the same plane of when we're using this sheet. When we sell a player, it's not just the headline profit or loss that we make on a player. We're also saving an annual charge of amortization that gets charged to profit and loss account. We also save the wages that we'd have to pay them in the next year as well. Okay, so we save more than the profit that we make on a player. And what this sheet will do is tell us how much we're going to make as a profit, if you all can tell us probably how much we can sell a player for. And it will also say how much we also saving as well in the annual charges. That helps us figure out what we're adding into the pot of money that we can actually spend on new players. That's all on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, this is where we're going to talk about who might be coming in, and we can figure out from the price, how long the contract is, what the weekly wage will be, what the annual cost is going to be, and again, how much is coming out of the pot for buying those players. And again, your input as to who might be coming in, how much might they be on wage-wise, how much might they cost. So that's basically the lay of the land of the sheet. The only one other thing I'd like to say is we got a brilliant profit last year, but that was very misreported in the press. It is a one-off get out of jail free card of about 116 million pounds that we made, but it was just on profit and loan fees. That is not sustainable. We get it. We got it for this year or last year, and then it went away. So savings that we get every single year are taking amortization and wages off. Selling players for profit are a one-hit wonder for a year, but then go away. So this is why the permo savings that I split out, These are the great things that we save every single year that we're taking out of our profit and loss sheet. And that matches to the what's going in every single year on this side. That's enough from me. I'm going to stop sharing now, maybe just to add back to a bit of conversation before we come back to the sheet, and we'll do the no's of what do we know, i.e. the players that are leaving us because their contract's expiring, and we can talk a bit about what does that initially put us back in the pot, and we'll build from there.
What we do know is that PSR and figures and finances, it is a minefield. So and a lot of what we talk about is based on speculation in terms of players that are potentially out the door and coming in. We do have some kind of harder tangibles we'll get into very, very soon. But just before I do that, Brucey from Texas is with us, and of course Gary as well. Gary Haas, big on. He's asking about, is it just a case of whacking a third shirt, getting a Brazil shirt and changing the badge? It might well be. You know, get your Brazil shirts out, get a Forest badge on it. Steve Battlemuch says maybe we should sell Willy Bolly. What do you reckon, Dan? No, it's a hard no.
It's a no from me. I'm out.
That's a hard no. Pete Blackburn with us. Pete, lovely to have you with us. I know, he's a legend.
Oh, all my dreams have come true. I can die happy now.
Yes, Raf is reaching for the tissues as we speak. Okay, let's also mention Mark Wayway at FFC, £2 for the pot. He wants to know, can we afford Gyökeres or Gyökeres? I'm not quite sure, but listen, the Forest recruitment team are pulling blinders, and it's unheard of, really. I can't think of another time when a club has gone to another club and purchased 3 of their players. I mean, I remember when we bought Ian Butterworth and Stuart Pearce back in the day from Coventry as a double deal, and there's other double deals along the way, but I can't remember 3. Before we get into it, of course, I'm talking about the Botafogo boys, Igor Jesus, Jair Cunha, and Cuiabano, or Cuiabano. Forgive me on the pronunciation, but I want to play you a video. I've nicked it from Tim Vickery. He is one of the hosts of the Brazil Shirt podcast. So this is their video from the Brazil Shirt podcast. I invite you to go and subscribe and watch the full video. But this is Tim Vickery getting rather excited about our new signing, Igor Jesus.
Who's a wonderful player, marvellous player, centre forward. Last year, he's playing in the Arab Emirates, not even in Saudi, playing in the Arab Emirates. Botafogo, whose scouting is very, very good. He's on their radar screen. They wait till his contract is done, so they bring him in on a free. So he's unveiled in July. By September, he's Brazil's centre forward. It's a terrific play. It's a great story. It's a great story. He's not in the squad this time, although Ancelotti watched him in the stadium last week, and it was one of the finest individual performances I've ever seen. Botafogo had a man sent off early in a game that they had to win, and he won it. Not only with a goal, but with hard work. And he's strong. He's quick. He's everything you want from a centre forward. He's strong. He's quick. He works the channels. He defends like a lion. He's a very, very good player, Igor Jesus.
Those of you that don't know, I'm sure most do, Tim Vickery is an expert when it comes to South American and Brazilian football in particular. So when he says that he's never seen a performance like it from Igor Jesus, who almost single-handedly won that game for Botafogo, it makes you sit up and listen. And he's not the only one coming. I mean, he had his last game last night, and if you've not seen the images on social media, the send-off from the Botafogo fans is something to behold. So here on his own coming to Forest, you know, he's one of those players that none of us have probably heard of. It wasn't on anybody's radar. The club have got a recruitment system set up in South America. We know about Murillo and Danilo coming in. Obviously, we had Scarpa that didn't quite work out. There'll always be one that doesn't. But you have to kind of be honest and say, look, the club seems to very much know what they're doing. And then there's Jair Cunha. He's a young, I think it's something like 20 years old, 6'5", 6'6" centre-back. And Cuiabano, the left-hand sided left-back, marauding, attacking wing-back, who was on Brighton's radar. And we know that their recruitment has been really, really good in recent seasons. So, like many of you, knew nothing about these 3 players until the last few days. I can't sit here. None of us can sit here and say, oh, I'm so glad we signed him because I've always wanted him to come to our club. So we're getting excited because we're Forest fans. It's what we do. Anyone who's going to come and just sign for the club, we're going to get excited about. But, you know, I remember when we were signing lads from bloody Milton Keynes, let alone chuffing Brazil. Do you know what I mean? We're signing Brazilians and we're signing, you know, Igor Jesus is a Brazilian international as well. So it's really, really exciting. And so in order to take us through these three Brazilians in just a bit more closer detail, there's only really one thing we can do.
I'm a stat man.
Moraes fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
Just realised that if Willy Body departs the club, we're going to have to edit him out at the end of that video, Dan. We're going to have to take him out.
Have to.
We
Yeah.
think we might. I think we might have to. I'm
find
joking.
someone
We would never
else.
do that for you. Right, Dan Scape, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I've been trying to dig into the numbers and crunch some of the numbers on these guys in a way to try and compare them to what we do know. So we don't know much about these players, but we know players that we've got at our team, and we know some of the other players in the Premier League. So it's trying to make some comparisons there, just going through them one by one. So Igor Jesus being the first one. And to start with, I suppose I just wanted to set a little bit of a picture of the type of team we are and the type of team Botafogo are in their league, if you like. As you go around this chart, with these radar charts, it's always a case that, you know, the further out the line is, the more you fill the chart, the better, generally. But in terms of style of play here, you can kind of see that if you look at us and Newcastle on the left, our style of play is not so much in terms of possession and ball carrying and chance creation in our league compared to other teams. But if we're trying to become more of an established, you know, top half side, then we want to be more like Newcastle and pushing our kind of chart out into those areas. And if you look at Botafogo, I think they're top of the league in Brazil at the minute. So they are a good team and they fill this chart out in a similar way to Newcastle. So just setting the scene a little bit on their style of play and what it might mean for what we're trying to do with our style of play to get wrestle a bit more control in games. So that's that one.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
And then this is looking at Igor Jesus himself. And feel free to jump in with any thoughts or comments on these charts. But in effect, again, these are all just different aspects of, you know, what you'd expect from a player on the pitch. And nobody fills every criteria, do they? You know, there's always a strength and a weakness to every player. And what we're looking at here for Igor Jesus is a comparison with Chris Wood on the right, which shows how different of a player they are. So, you know, we know what Chris Wood's strength is. It's his finishing. He's a good target man, but he doesn't necessarily fulfill some of the chart on the right, which is things like controlling possession, progressive passing, his attacking movement. You know, compared to other players, it's smart in the box, but it's not across the whole front line. And you can see between these charts as you go around the particular strengths of Igor Jesus. I'm going to have to learn to say that easier.
I think you say it with a hard J. If it's Portuguese, it's a hard J. If it's Spanish, it's the Jesus. So it's Jesus.
Okay. Jesus.
I would be the resident Portuguese monger. Don't worry.
You can, the linguist. But you can see his strengths are these things that Chris Wood is missing. So his strengths are his attacking movement. His strengths is his box crashing kind of movement and his creation around the final third. But unfortunately, what his weakness is, compared to Chris Wood, is his finishing of chances by quite some way. You know, Chris Wood is in that top 20% of kind of strikers in the Premier League, and Jesus is down in kind of the bottom 40% in the Brazilian league, which I would probably hazard a guess is a lower standard anyway than the Premier League in terms of that. So different style of players. And when we come on to the next slide, you'll perhaps see that I don't think we're comparing like for like entirely if we're talking about centre forwards. And so you start to wonder whether Jesus will play out wide or whether we're trying to adapt a different style of play. So if you flick onto the next slide, I suppose this is just quickly to compare him with Hudson-Odoi and Elanga to show that actually if you're comparing the two lines on the chart with Jesus being the green one and the other player being the blue one, he's probably the most similar to Elanga in terms of where his strengths lie in the style of play. So again, it's kind of chance creation, controlling the ball, that sort of stuff. So that's just a quick comparison. But the more interesting one is the next slide. Skip forward.
Dan, I have a quick question.
Oh yeah, go.
Yeah, so in relation to the way that he plays, so there's often this thing thrown out there, and I'm sure we might talk about this more in depth, but as it relates to this plan B concept. So when you're thinking about him, are you thinking about him always as just a change up from Chris Wood within the flow of play, or depending on who we're facing from an opposition standpoint, is there going to be times where you think we could slot him in because some of the things that he offers may be different than Callum, that we can put him on the field right away? In a sort of, because it sounds like you're saying he can probably vacillate between a 9 and a winger. Is that true? I'm just trying to think of what that means in terms of plan B.
Well,
right?
this is this is what's interesting about it. Him, if he was to become your number 9, you'd have to you could play in a very different way to how we play now. You wouldn't have to, but you can play in a very different way.
Would it be more of a 4-3-3?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Formation wise, you're going to have a player who's actually going to be very quick across that front line, and if you come onto those next slides, I suppose the closer comparison, and you'll see it's quite a close comparison on these charts, is to Visser and Isak. Now, again, the downside with Jesus is the finishing. Again, his finishing is a long way off these players, and that's because he's
got a pretty good mentor, though.
Yeah, exactly. So this is clearly what we've seen. Hopefully, is that okay? A lot of his profile is very similar to Visser's. You know, he almost exactly the same until you get to the finishing part of that kind of radar there. Albeit, you know, he's actually probably performing better than Visser in his league. Again, the standards might be different. And again, it's very similar to Isak's on the right, apart from the finishing. But you can see, you know, he's definitely going to bring that completely different style of centre forward, or he might play, you know, in a wide role if we can't sort his finishing out. But hopefully it's given us that other option. The question is, does that become plan A? You know, do we actually change plan A, or is it a case of plan B, and maybe we evolve over the course of the season? So it's exciting because for me, you know, that's the only downside we've had with Chris Wood is getting him more involved in play and stretching teams, which is definitely the exciting part of what Jesus might bring to us, providing they can finish work on his finishing.
Yeah, on that finishing piece, because I've heard the fact that he loves a shot. Like he's like top 3 of all players for the volume of shots that he gets off. So if he became more disciplined to actually shoot only when he had better chances, would his shooting stick the spike come out more towards Wood in that stat?
Well, if we go to the next slide, I think I've cleverly,
fortunately,
prepared that exact.
It's almost as if we planned this, but we really didn't. We really didn't.
So I pulled out the two things that, you know, his strength, which is his attacking movement. So I pulled that out on the left. So you can see there, he's again the green line. Chris Wood is the red line, which you can see very limited on that chart in terms of attacking movement. And Isak is the blue line. And you can actually see that Jesus, you know, dominates Isak on that chart in terms of attacking movement, which is things like, you know, how many touches you get in the box, getting close to goal for your shots, receiving passes in the dangerous areas, things like that. So again, promising on that side. Finishing is shown on the right-hand side. And this is where Chris Wood's red line completely dominates the chart because, you know, he's been elite this season, even better than Isak. But you can see where Jesus falls down is that, the quality of the shots he's taking, which is on the left, the non-penalty expected goals per shot is low. So he's taking too many shots from chances where he's not going to score. But his shot conversion is also low, if you know what I mean. So at the minute, he's getting his shots on target at the bottom of the chart, but he's just not making a good decision in the final third is what that would suggest. So he's taking those snapshots. I'd say maybe he's a bit like a Darwin Núñez, someone like that, where everything up to that final bit is good, but he's just got to get that decision making right in the last part of the move.
You were doing so well when you started. Listen, you mentioned Wissa, you mentioned Isak. Raf's reaching for the tissues. He's getting excited again, and then all of a sudden you mention Darwin Núñez. I mean, there's a comment I saw a moment ago from Nick. He said, finishing, does he miss chances or does he not have such good chances? So put us out of our misery. Are you saying that he likes to shoot a lot and doesn't score as many as he should, or he just likes to shoot a lot and really shouldn't be shooting in certain situations?
I think he likes to shoot a lot, but what I would say is his shot distance is quite good, as in he shoots close to goal, but he's still not converting those chances. So it could be, You know what I mean? It could be a bit of both. Unfortunately, it could be that he is missing a few sitters because his goals XG isn't high up there on the chart.
Alex in the comments I'm not sure if Alex has got inside knowledge or watches a lot of stuff, but talking with a little bit of authority, perhaps, Alex says most of his shots are from outside the box, but he is fantastic with his head. Most of his goals are glancing headers from crosses.
So that's it. So that sounds like he needs to, instead of shooting from outside the box, lay it off, get in the box, and get on the end of the cross more often, basically.
Yeah.
What that's saying.
Okay. So let's move on. So anything else on? No, we're moving on to our next guy. Just before we do that, did anyone in the panel have anything they wanted to add on Igor Jesus? Again, just to kind of remind everyone, we're new to him. We don't know an awful lot about him. Richard, I think you want to come in.
Yeah, just like one aspect of his game that I kind of like, based off of, again, this is all optics oriented because I don't know how you could really drive a stat from this. How far does Taiwo push an opposing player away from the ball? I don't know if that's a legitimate stat, but one of the things I think was great about Taiwo, and we've talked about a lot about with him, is that physicality and that ability to kind of shield things, and then he just creates disruption right through that physicality. And I like the idea that Jesus, while not as tall as Taiwo, he seems to have a little bit of that to his game as well, which I kind of like. That's another aspect that Wood's not by any means just a patsy out there and gets moved off the ball considerably, but I do think there's a difference there, and I think that's something that I'm excited about seeing as well, because it brings elation, right, when we see Taiwo just absolutely like dominate someone physically, and that was always exciting, especially that first season. So if he's got aspects of that to his game too, that's going to make him even more interesting.
Yeah, Pat Brett says in the comments something that I'd mentioned. I think Rafa mentioned as well, wondering if Nuno might be going towards the kind of 4-3-3 rather than the 4-2-3-1. I think I've seen in previous articles over the last year that Nuno is traditionally a 4-3-3 guy and might be looking to go that way. Pat, what do you reckon, Raf? Do you think that that's what he's trying to evolve to?
If we kind of look at what team I would ideally like to emulate, I love Newcastle, of what they're about with the fluidity and the interchanging up front in the midfield. They all just intermingle, but in a more productive and direct way than Man City do it. Basically, they're more exciting to watch, and I'd love us to do that. And that is being 4-3-3. That's having three midfielders that can interchange. It's our forwards. If you think about it, Elanga interchanges and moves all around the place. It sounds like Jesus can do exactly the same and move all around the place. I actually think, Callum used to be a 10, like back in the day. He can drift in and operate in the middle if he needs to as well. So it's now about getting on midfield to be able to do that as well. And we'll come on to potentially how I actually think having a true 6 unlocks the ability for us to play a 4-3-3 with two very attacking 8s that sit in there.
Yeah. Okay. Cuiabano. Now this is the guy that Brighton had either tried to sign or had a lot of interest in. Raf rubbing his hand. You're very excited today, Raf. You're like a kid in a sweet shop. And I like it. I love it. I love the enthusiasm. But Dan, tell us what you can about Cuiabano.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I've been after a left-footed left back for a while. Mention it pretty much every pod, so this is ticking that box already. And again, just comparing him to players we know. Now, what I've noticed in our stats for our defenders this season is, we don't have the most. We don't get our defenders involved in the attacking play that much. But Nico Williams is the player that does the most, definitely, for us. So he's the comparison I've used as a fullback, again, with a chart that's just comparing the same sort of styles of play for the players. Obviously, this time you'd expect different strengths because you're talking about a defender, not a forward. But you can see that actually he's quite a close match to Nico Williams on this chart. So, he's good at ball winning in terms of being intense and going out and closing down and making tackles. He's good at ball carrying in the same way that Nico Williams is. His attacking movement kind of stands out a little bit more than Nico's in terms of how often he's, into the penalty area and that kind of thing, and staying on sides, little technical details like that. But I suppose that might also be down to the fact that Botafogo are kind of a top team in their league, so he's going to dominate a bit more. But again, his final third involvement on the left of that chart is above Nico's as well. So again, suggests he's gonna add a little bit more in an attacking sense. The negative, which is the kind of little red dash I've put at the top, is just his defensive side in terms of being a penalty box defender, which is getting up and clearing things with your head and making and blocking shots and that kind of thing. And that's where he has dipped down compared to Williams. But again, there's possibly a part of that where if you're playing for a more possession-based side, you don't have to do as much defending, which Botafogo are. So there might be a bit of a transition there, but quite a similar profile. And then on the right, I just compared him to Estupiñán, which was one of the other links we had early on, and is probably a similar player, I think, in terms of being that kind of attacking left-back. And you can see, again, Cuiabano, similar profile. If anything, he's potentially the better option if you look at the defensive stats at the top of the chart. So in terms of his box defending compared to Estupiñán and his dueling ability and his ball winning ability, it's all up there, and it's probably slightly better. So this seems like a very good fit, whereby you're not going to lose too much on the defensive side, albeit I'm sure he's going to have to do a few more headers than he does in Brazil. But I'm excited by this one.
I've seen a couple of the goals that he scored. He can finish, this boy, and he's got that left foot. So.
What I'd quickly like to say is massive shout out to Nico. You think of like how Estupiñán is like in everyone's FPL and everyone raves about him and how amazing he was for Brighton. He was like the key to so much of their play. But Nico's surface area box is better than Estupiñán's as far as I can see. And I just think it's absolutely brilliant. The other thing is that we've seen how Nico's defensive side has come on in the last 18 months and just got better and better. So if there's anyone that can teach, and Nico is really a right wing back, and Cuiabano apparently is playing in the left hand side of the three that sits behind the striker in a 4-2-3-1 anyway, and he's been playing up there. So I think there's a lot of Nico that can mentor him and get him to where Nico is in terms of bringing on the defensive side. So I think it's really promising. And what I love about this is us bringing in players that are similar to what we have in terms of structures. We're going to come on to Jair in a minute, but this is another one where they can learn off of someone that is a few years older than them, have been through the same journey. And it just shows that succession planning that I'm so proud as a club we seem to be getting on top of.
Well, what's interesting too is that when we were looking at the player of the season, Raf, you and I talked about this. Dan brought this up to me as well. The stats for Nico are quite better than Ola's, which is a weird thing to think about, considering his natural position historically. Right, Nico has been that right back, at least for us anyway. I think he plays a little. He's kind of a hybrid guy with Wales, but I think it's remarkable to think about the kind of depth and options we're going to have with this guy in conjunction with Ola potentially and Nico. It just gives us, it's getting more, it's moving the needle more to that sort of squad that we need. That's not massive in terms of the number of all players, but what we can do with the individual players, it makes them they're pretty multiple, which is exciting.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. You got a few more bits on Cuiabano, Danscape.
Yeah, this was just focusing in on the kind of his weakness and his strength again, just to see how he compares on the specific. What is it about that area of his game that's either a strength or a weakness? And in terms of the box defending, it's what we've kind of mentioned. His aerial duel win rate's a little bit lower than Williams. He doesn't make many clearances, doesn't make as many tackles, and doesn't block as many shots. So that's just highlighting, where ultimately it's about options, isn't it? That's what we're looking for. So you've got an option of an attacking left back, and you've got the option of a more solidly defensive left back, depending on who you're playing. And then on the right hand side, it's that final third involvement where, again, Nico's doing really well. If you look at his chart on the right in red, he's doing well in all those areas, but Cuiabano is just that little bit further ahead in terms of how many touches he gets in the penalty area and how many passes he's on the end of in those attacking areas as well to kind of push the move forward. So that was that one.
One really thing quickly, Dan, I would say very quickly is the fact that actually on the defensive side, he's not actually miles off Nico. Not miles off. Again, it's different leagues. I do appreciate that. But I just don't think Botafogo clear the ball as much as we do, given how they are dominating their league. So I think probably that stat is a bit skewed just by style of what the teams play.
Style of defending, but again, that comes back to how we want to play, doesn't it? Because if we're going to do low block again, and you're going to sit in and have to make all those clearances, then you're going to need to be able to do that. But if we're going to evolve, then you open up other options.
One thing that I've found quite interesting since the news broke about these 3 Brazilians from Botafogo is that everyone's been trying to find out the information they can on them. But I encourage you guys to go and check out Forest Fan TV, Forest Focus, and Red Side of the Trent, because they all had a Brazilian come on linked to Botafogo. We've done none of that. We've got Danscape. So Danscape, I've got to be honest with you, you are our resident. You are now Donaldo.
I better learn to pronounce the name.
You are Donaldo, because the other pod all got a Brazilian on to talk about these players, and you've done rather well with your knowledge in a short space of time to turn around your slides and your graphs on them. So well done to you, mate. The third of the new trio is Jair Cunha, and he's the young 20-year-old 6'5", 6'6" centre back. Apparently, Tim Vickery isn't as sold on this lad as others are, and that's interesting. But what do we know about this chap to bring us up to speed? And yeah, Raf is definitely not a Brazilian.
What we know, well, it's just trying to compare, I suppose, which of our existing centre backs is he the most similar to? He's a young guy. He's not played that many minutes, so there's obviously limits on what the data is going to tell you here. But he's actually, I think he's probably less similar to Murillo and more similar to Milenkovic in a way from what he's done so far. But it's, again, it's off the ball and in possession is probably a little bit different. So on the left is his comparison to Murillo. Murillo's line being in red there. And you can kind of see that Murillo dominates most areas on the chart, particularly, again, that box defending, which is what our style of play has been, which Murillo's really come on at this season and improved at. Again, more ball winning from Murillo, but a more progressive passing from Murillo, more of a playmaker, more of a chance creator. And I think this is where I'm saying he's perhaps a little bit more like Milenkovic so far in his career, and that he's not the guy who's on the ball dictating play from the back, which is what Murillo does for us.
I've seen him for his size, he does look rather nifty on the ball. I've seen clips of him stepping out from the back into the midfield and carrying the ball rather well. It looks like a gazelle with long legs with the ball at his feet. Maybe it's just something that all Brazilians can do because they're doing it from such a young age on the beach and so on. So I hear what you're saying in terms of at the moment, because of his stature and his graph and his pie chart, if you like, looks more like a Nikola Milenkovic type. But I feel quite excited about this one, to be honest with you, in terms of what he might become.
Yeah. So if you look at the ball carrying, he is above Murillo in terms of ball carrying. And then when you get to Milenkovic, he's above that. It's just that, it's that chance creation, which could be down to the fact that Murillo takes a lot of set pieces and things like that. There's always the context to it. But yeah, the clips I've seen as well, he's very nimble with the ball. So the comparison with Milenkovic is again, I think a little bit more similar in terms of the way the chart lays out. Again, that box defending is where he's going to be tested. Let's be real. Getting balls into the box, dealing with big physical strikers that you get in the Premier League. And if we are a team that sits back again, that's going to be his challenge compared to Milenkovic, who's outstanding at that.
Forgive me if you've mentioned this and I missed it, but what's he like in the air? He's very tall, and we've started to employ Land of the Giants for the last 18 months to solve the problem at set pieces, which we did this season. And it feels like bringing in another tall player. Morato's tall, but not great in duels. He can win a header on his own, but he's pants when it comes to dueling. What's this lad like?
His stats are interesting. Well, his stats are limited. He doesn't face that many duels. By comparison to the number of duels that Milenkovic and Murillo are facing in the air, he just doesn't face that many of them. But what he has faced, he's got a very, very high win rate. So I think that's what I'm saying is you can't quite compare that and translate it at the minute until you put him in for 90 minutes against, Isak or a Solanke or someone like that who's in the box testing you every 5 minutes. So that's hard. It's a little bit hard to say, but the win rate is promising, definitely.
Just Dan, very quickly on that last slide that you had, we've all lauded Milenkovic and the arrival of Milenkovic, and he's like the second coming and has effectively got us to where we've got to. But I would really like to highlight in this of how much Murillo has progressed. And you look at his chart compared to Milenkovic. Milenkovic has probably enabled it, And Matt on Forest Focus went through the kind of Premier League stats for defenders, and Murillo was in the top 3 for just about everything. And there's only one stat that Milenkovic was ahead of Murillo for. And I think this chart proves the fact of how valuable Murillo actually is and how elite he is this season. And I think it's gone a bit under the radar because everyone's focusing on Milenkovic.
I agree. I think it has been said that Murillo has developed this season, and I think we talked about, and I've talked about at length, that I believe the key to that has been having someone of Nikola Milenkovic's stature and style and experience next to him. It's just become a really happy blend. The partnership has been really, really successful. And to be honest with you as well, as much as Milenkovic has enabled Murillo to develop, it's probably true the other way as well. It's probably true that, in fact, Milenkovic is able to do the job that he does because he's got a Murillo next to him. You know, there's times that Murillo is doing what he does off the ball, and Milenkovic is able to kind of go in and win the ball back and put the tackle in because he knows he's got Murillo there. So I kind of feel like it is a bit of a two-way street as well, and we shouldn't forget that. Okay, right, next slide.
Absolutely.
You looked at also comparisons to Morata and Bolly in the spirit of time against us. We're going to kind of wrap up the stats there. I think we get the picture. But
well,
of
we
course,
just get the picture of how good Willy Bolly is compared to Milenkovic on the right, just quickly. You know, let's give Willy Bolly his love because he might get released today, for all you know. Willy Bolly's chart compared to João, Paula. If you want an elite box defender, Willy Bolly right up there in the 90th percentile in terms of winning headers, getting the ball away, winning your tackles, and doing all the basics of defending. Morata on the left, you can see that, you know, potentially. Jair Paula is gonna outstrip Morata even, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay, and yeah, it should be said the big Willy Bolly, you know, shouldn't be underestimated how much we absolutely love him. We love Big Willy because he has given us lots of joy this season, even though he didn't get the game time that we thought he would. And I hoped he would have a big moment. If he does get released today, then we certainly wish him well. And hopefully he can find his way over to Saudi Arabia and make lots of money. And Nuno there at the end with his Brazil kit. Maybe he'll go on to become the Brazil manager. He's almost the Brazil manager with the amount of players we've got from Brazil coming in. Okay, when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about the costings for these three, okay, and what that might mean for Nottingham Forest and how it links into a certain other Brazilian who might be heading out.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Our sponsor is a Forest fan. If you've never been to a Talking Reds episode before, Stu Freestone is the Cheese Trader. He is based in York. You can order for next day delivery. He's available for all your weddings and bar mitzvahs, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, support fellow Forest fans. All the links are in the bio. And as Big Arn says, if you can do us a favour and smash the like, everybody, that'd be really good. We've got over 130 people watching live, which is really good for us. As only a year in and sort of trying to find our place and so on, and give you the kind of content hopefully you enjoy, and pass comment on things with a little bit of expertise when it comes to the finances. And on that note, it's worth saying that nothing is really kind of happening in my mind until one of two people tweet. And Fabrizio Romano, it's not quite a here we go, but he did start the ball rolling last night when he did state on X that Forest have sealed the triple deal with Botafogo, and he's putting it down as like a 35 million euro deal. Now, let's call it 35 million. I mean, in some places, Raf is being quoted as 40 million euros. For the three of them, I mean, that just sounds like an unbelievable deal, first and foremost. But just kind of tidy it up for us in terms of finances going out. And also, we know the news has broken that Lyon have an interest in Danilo. And the overriding factor, for those that don't know, is John Textor, the American. Now, he is the part owner of Lyon. He's a part owner of Crystal Palace, and he also is a part owner of Botafogo. And of course, there's the other Europa Conference problem that Palace have got with that dual ownership with Lyon, which is another story altogether. But we'll focus on what it means for Forest. So Danilo going out to Lyon, potentially, and we know about the deals we did with Lyon last year with the Mangala Gate and Niakate Gate saga, and lots of back scratching going on again. So take us through it, Raf, in terms of how this might benefit John Textor in moving some of the money around.
Yeah. So very, very quickly, without getting too technical, but there is a mechanic here where I think cash or value can be moved from Botafogo, which have lots of money and value, to Lyon that have no cash and are heavily indebted. So effectively, we get a bundle of 3 players from Botafogo, and you drop the price on them. If it is the fab valuation on it, that is seriously lowball for what they are actually worth, by about the tune of probably 15 million quid, I would say. So you take 15 million pounds off that price. We then sell to Lyon a player like Danilo. And some people, like, again, chat on Forest Focus yesterday, we were talking about the value of it, and the value of Danilo. 20 million quid is potentially fair. I'd say it might be a bit low. 25 million is probably about where it is. So Lyon get Danilo for 5 million quid less. We're getting players for 10 to 15 million quid less. So there's an exchange value for facilitating this transfer of value, that we get a benefit of, say, 5 to 10 million quid as Forest for Marinakis enabling this. But through the transfer, Lyon are better off. We're better off, and Botafogo are sadly not better off. And that's why a lot of their fans are supposedly kicking off at the moment. That's in a nutshell kind of how it works, how you shift the cash around and it look street legal.
Just freezing a little bit on me. You still with me, Raf?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry if I froze there.
That's fine. Okay. So, Richard, back to you. So we're looking at these 3 coming in, and look, it's a done deal. As far as I can see, they've said their goodbyes. It's a done deal. Danilo looks like he's going out to Lyon, and as Rafa said, it kind of links together in a way to help John Textor out as well. One more player that we probably should throw into the mix, and time is against us all of a sudden, is Morgan Gibbs-White. So we kind of almost reconciled and come to terms with the fact that Morgan Gibbs-White is going to be on his way. City were making noises about wanting to sign him. The June window, I should say, has opened on the 1st of June for 10 days ahead of the Club World Cup, so that those teams competing can try and make signings. So I was half expecting him to be gone. Now, he's on England duty, so I know that possibly gets in the way of that potentially. It seems like Man City interest is cooled. There's been potential interest from Arsenal. Another name came out this morning, Chelsea possibly interested. I mean, who aren't Chelsea interested in? So that should come as no surprise. But look, is Gibbs-White staying all of a sudden? What does that mean if we don't sell him? And Raf will come in shortly on this with the money. I'll come to Richard and Dan first. Do you think it's now time to cash in on Gibbs-White and say, look, actually, what we're trying to do here means that this is the time to sell Morgan? Because if he doesn't go, he's got to sign a new contract, hasn't he?
I would agree with that. Yeah. Kind of similar to the Cunha situation, right? To guarantee that sort of release clause number. But I was adamant that he was gone, not because I love the idea of him being gone, because we all know how I feel about him. And I'm probably the same. I'm probably the head of that, chairman of that fan club like Dan is for Willy Bolly. But I would agree with you. I think the one important factor in this discussion, because he was headed to Man City by all accounts, and they didn't like the price point, which I'm not surprised by. 100 million pounds is a lot of money. But even if we could get somewhere in that 80 to 85 million pound range, we'd be in a good space. Raf will talk more about the financials. I think, though, that this is the point that I think is critical, because Raf has talked about this, I think, throughout the entire season. Some of us, and myself included, were a little slow to convert to the idea that maybe the best way to utilize him is to allow him to play in more of an 8 role and kind of flank Sangare with Anderson. So you have creative players that are surrounding a guy that I know Raf doesn't necessarily see as a true 6. I personally see him as a true 6 with a little bit more extra properties with an 8 the 8 would possess, right? But he certainly, to me, has the propensity to do that, at least the last few matches that we saw. Still much more to come on him. But how does Morgan Gibbs-White adapt? Because if we're honestly looking at a tactical and a formational change, can he actually fit into that? That would be the question I'd have at this stage. Raf can go on the finances piece, but it's how is he going to be leveraged in terms of what he does on the pitch to contribute? Because we all know what his skill set is. And it seemed like based off of that, it would fit a Man City sort of profile. I don't know how he fits to Chelsea. Raf's a little bit more tapped into the concept of Chelsea. But I do feel like at this stage, it's likely, unless something comes in that's pretty astronomical in that 80, 85, 90 million pound range, or there's some sort of player swap concept. I mean, if he goes to Chelsea, could we possibly pull in Madueke? I mean, something of that nature that provides some good return for us, not only financially, but from a player standpoint that we can leverage, because we know we need some depth on the wingers as well. We know that Igor Jesus will provide some of that by his versatility, but bring a guy like Madueke in would be fantastic. I tend to believe he's staying, though. I don't see him going at this stage because I just think maybe the cost for most clubs is too high. But again, that's all speculative, as we've said with a lot of other things. But I'm just curious how we're going to use him if he does stay. That's the part I'm still a little bit perplexed by.
What about you, Dan? I mean, did you think he was going, and do you now think he's staying? I mean, can you sum up what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I assumed he was on the way out. I assumed we were following the Brighton model that we talk about, which is, you sell one big player every season, you invest in another 3, and then you hope that one of those comes through, and you keep repeating that cycle. So it sort of seemed like Gibbs-White was at that point because of his contract status, because of his performances. And his biggest asset is his consistency. The fact he's available to play every week and he's that good is a big asset to somebody. Now, whether Man City have completely parked that idea, we'll find out. But I think it is fascinating at the minute. There's so many plates in the air because you've got different styles of players coming in. You've got players like Gibbs-White who've been absolutely key and consistent for us. But then if you start changing the style of play, we saw when Gibbs-White played in the right-hand kind of wide role under Cooper, he didn't get involved in the game enough. And he struggles, so he has to be brought back into that middle role. So, how do you get him a role in a team where you might go to 4-3-3? He is an attacking player, so he would suit what Raf said earlier about an attacking number 8. But there's just so many things up in the air that, as we go through the window, these things will hopefully narrow down and we'll actually have a picture of what we're going to do. The one thing I hope is that it's not a last-minute deal where someone comes in, with a week left and we have to panic buy a replacement. That's the worst-case scenario, because obviously his value diminishes as his contract goes and all that. There's a lot still to decide on it.
Yeah, maybe oh, go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing about Morgan is that he's a very intelligent footballer. He can play whatever role I think that he's asked to play. I think probably wants to be the 10. He wants to be the linchpin. He wants to be the guy that's joining everything up. But I think he can do that from a deeper role as one of 2 8s. So if he's playing with Elliott as one of 2 8s, if he stays, and it looks like he probably will stay, the thing as well you want to remember is that you want to keep your best players. Alex says it as well. He can adapt to easily being an 8. Whether he's willing to is a different matter. I think he probably is willing to. I think he'll play wherever he's asked to. If he's excuse me, if he's having an impact on the game, I think he's happy. Whatever that looks like, but we want to keep hold of our best players. Wherever possible, and he certainly is that. I want to kind of just come quickly to Richard before I go to Raf, because you wanted to jump in, Richard.
No, I was just going to say, and Raf may touch on this, so apologize, Raf, if I'm kind of bleeding into what you would discuss. But I think Raf and I have talked a lot about what the value of selling him now is, because he's never going to be more, I think, valuable than he is right now, because of his age, because of his experience. Now, we all would hope for a little bit of an uptick in terms of performance level, in terms of goals and assists, because if he's hitting 10 goals and 10 assists every season, none of us are going to be upset about that. If Elliot Anderson can shift to a slight uptick in terms of goal production, he already had pretty decent assist numbers for his first full season in the Premier League. If we get that kind of performance out of Morgan, even in an 8 role, and we've all long said too, just in terms of his ability to survey the field, because one of the best things that he does is switching play. And he's able to find that elite pass to someone, whether at their feet or at their head. And so having a little bit of a deeper role, I think, gives him an opportunity to survey the field in that way, which I think just works to his strengths. But Would you agree, Raf? I think it's just the difficulty is I don't want to see a good player like that leave, a player who's now playing for England, a guy that's been our talisman since we came into the Premier League. The reality, though, is you have to hit these things at the right time. Otherwise, their value, as I think Dan just touched on, starts to diminish year over year as they get older. So we don't want to put ourselves in a position where, you know, if we wait 2 or 3 more years, we're going to be selling him for quite considerably less than we would get right now when we are trying to continue to build depth in the squad. So
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the question, Raf, to go with that is, what does it mean for Forest if he stays in terms of the financials, and what does it mean for Forest if we do sell him for the best money we can get for him?
Yeah, so very quickly before we go to the sheet, what I would say is with Morgan Gibbs-White, it's just us selling at the right time. If he stays, he has to sign a new contract because otherwise his value decreases. If he signs a new contract, he's on, say, another 50k a week, probably thrown on there to get from what I think about 80 to about 130 or something like that. Agents get paid on the full whack of the new value of the contract. That's probably for another 4 years at 130k as a percentage of 5% on the value of that. There'll be a big signing bonus for getting him to do that as well, which all goes in. So it kind of costs us incrementally for him staying, taking on all of those costs, about another 3.5 million quid a year. That's actually not shocking in the grand scheme of things for keeping him an extra 3.5 million quid a year. The issue is if he's not gone and we've got all these players that were coming in to build proper depth that we want to do, the numbers don't stack up. Someone big's got to go. Or we get 3 tech store deals that are done through the back door, which I don't see happening again. So we either have to dismantle a few players or one big one. And this is what this sheet will indicate, basically.
Okay, so I think that there's more deals to be done, similar to what we did last year with Texter and the like. I don't think that in my eyes, it's the difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion's illegal. Tax avoidance isn't. So at the moment, clubs are playing within the rules. So if they decide they're going to scratch each other's back with deals that help them with PSR situations, then I think they'll continue to do that. And you've already touched on how this Botafogo Leon 3-way with Forest is designed to help John Textor perhaps move some money around or do something similar. So I kind of feel those deals are still there to be had. Your spreadsheet then, Gibbs-White stays, Gibbs-White goes. What can you tell us?
Right. So basically, let's very quickly just do the basics of, we've got Hennessy, we've got Moreno has gone back home. Bolly, sadly, potentially maybe leaving us. Toffolo's probably leaving. Panzo has already left. Right. So we know that these players are out of contract. Just by putting these players out of contract, that does add nearly 8 million quid's worth of profit back onto the P&L sheet for next year, which is a big whack. But what I would draw attention to is all these players here that I said were out on loan. Remember, there is about exactly that amount of money that was potentially covered in wages when, like, Turner was out at Palace and others. I don't think that's the same. I reckon Ollie probably paid us the money, but I don't know if, like, we just tell people just to take Dennis, take Bowler, for example, take Turner. I don't know if we were substituting it.
Do you think Turner could come in and do a job in a number 8 role? That save you some money?
Well, let's also add in as well that Leon apparently wants to sign Turner, so that's got Vlachodimos all over it.
Look, there's definitely stuff that's going on. So what we can do, what do we know? We know these players, when we get the release clauses, that probably adds about 7 to 8 million quid back in to the pot. Now I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to get rid of these so we know what. Yeah, these, right. So so for the players that are coming in, this is where we think we know that we've got these 3 Brazilians that are coming in. Price wise, I've gone for the Percy £40 million, and I've spread it around. We're in the margin. It's not a massive variance, right? And I think probably you've got Jesus, which is going to be about 17 million quid. Jair won't be less than 13 million quid, given he was bought for 12 million euros only in February and has played exceptionally for them since. And Cuiabano probably about 10. They're all probably, because they're super young, going to be put on 5-year contracts, I would imagine, and Jesus only to protect his value for a resale. If he actually is a hit as a player, Brazil 9, he's going to go through the roof, and we need 3 years to protect his value. Wages, not a clue. I've estimated the fact that Jesus is probably going to be on around about 50 because he's an international, because he's a 9, because he's flexible. The others would be more around what Murillo was on when he was brought over, around the 30 mark, probably per week for these guys. But if we plug all of that in, that shows the fact that we've already got 14 million pounds that is being put into the bottom line. And what I haven't done, but I don't think it's going to be large for any of these players, are the agency fees. The signing bonus is definitely not. The agency fees, I'm not entirely too sure. So even those haven't been added in here, but we're probably around about the 14 and change mark. So as you can see, we are already 6 to 7 million quid behind where we need to be in terms of balancing the books. And remember, we need to improve by 30 million next year as well. So we're about 36 million quid behind where we need to be, and we haven't filled any of these other depth roles yet, which is then when we start getting to the interesting pieces. So everyone, this is where let's think about the players that have rumoured to go, right? Danilo, supposedly 21 million pounds, or I think it was 25 million euros, which is about 21 million quid if we put that in there. If we, or actually, so I think he's probably going. Callum, maybe not. Sangare, maybe not. But let's look at Morgan Gibbs-White. Okay, so if we get Danilo out and we sell him for 21 million quid, then we're probably going to get a benefit of about 16 and a half. But we're up to 24 just as a hit and not passing the can. There's about 13 million that we've got, and it's nearly balancing the perpetuity every single year. So we're actually, to balance out, if Danny goes and these 3 Brazilians come in on a year to year, every single year, we've kind of just about balanced the books, but we have a bonus of throwing in another about 11 million quid for next year alone to try and chip away at this 30. So it's helping us of where we are, but we know other players need to come in. Now, Morgan Gibbs-White. If we sell Morgan Gibbs-White, right team, what do you think the value would be for Morgan if we sold him?
I think the club's not going to take anything less than 80 million.
Right.
I think that's got to be the baseline.
Put in
on 45 plus add-ons will mean that if we sell him for 80, Wolves are going to get some of that probably. I'd imagine. I'm guessing they might not, but
it was 25 plus add-on. So it was the maximum that he went to was about 40. I have baked in the fact that of the 20 million add-ons, about 15 have been realised at various different times of us not getting relegated and not being and him getting his various cap-related England stuff.
Yeah. I think minimum of 80. I don't know what anyone else thinks. I mean, Doran Tours says between 60 and 80 mil in the comments. I think 60 is a bit low, if I'm honest with you, Ben. I think 60 is too low. I think that might be
75. Just be we
confident. I think you could end up with a 70 plus add-ons type scenario. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay, well the add-ons are not going to happen straight away. So 70 is what we're getting in. So if we say 70, right, as the base minimum of what will be guaranteed that we get, you take the 70. So we've got a little addition. And again, it hasn't jumped up in Permo savings because remember, what we're doing is just lifting off these elements of his amortization and his wages. But it is getting us into the green of being able to sign in terms of new players about another, well, doubling kind of what we've already put on the books in terms of money coming in when you think of what we've just signed and the types of wages. But it does instantly clear us for next year with a margin to play with. If we look at these numbers just for next year, again, if we're Brighton, we're selling a big player every single year. So we've just I don't like, and I don't advise football clubs like this, but to think in a one term, they all think for just the next year, not in a 5-year arc or whatever it is. But just to cover the 30 million improvement that we need next year, we have got about 70 million improvement. So we've got 70 million. We need 30 million improvement. We got 70. So we've got back in the kitty about 40 million quids worth of profit and loss that we can add into here, and we don't have to sell. But very, very quickly, if you want to do it, we could do, and then I think we can probably carry this on when we do other pods and think about, and when more news breaks. Very quickly, guys, team, give me, if we can sell Turner, how much do you think we'll get for him?
Is this the real value or the texture value?
They got stupid money from Paconomos. So
no, let's go real value, like 5 million or something like that.
He's an international goalkeeper. He is a US international. He's got Premier League experience. I think they'd be looking for 10 million for him.
10 mil. Right. Okay. Then we have got who else potentially? Richards out at Ollie. 1 year left on his contract.
Like 500k.
No, it won't be as low as that. I think
because his wages will be high for the level he's going to. That's the trouble. I think that's always the problem we have shifting these fringe players is we pay Prem wages and they don't prove to be Prem level, so they have to step down and it just becomes too much.
$1 million? I still think $1 million.
Right, £1 million. Omobama Delhi.
We paid 11 million for him.
Yeah, I'm going to say 12, 15.
Yeah, because he's got Premier League minutes under his belt. He's gone to Strasbourg. I know he had a nightmare in his last game.
As long as the YouTube highlight reel doesn't have the last game in it, then I think he's 15.
I think 15. I think you're right, Raf. I think 15.
All right, okay, which is good. Bindon is not going anywhere. More no. Carmo. I don't know if Pete's still on. He'll know the answer of what's going to be shown on Forest Focus if he's a hit or a miss. Do you think we're selling Carmo?
I don't think so. I don't think we'll sell him. If he doesn't come in and get a squad place, he'll go back out on loan, I think.
Okay, O'Brien, 1 year left on his contract.
He's going. He's got to go.
I think he'd be in demand in the Championship.
Yeah.
What kind of money can you get? 5 million? Could you get a decent Championship?
He's got a year left on his contract.
2.5.
Yeah.
I reckon you'd be good to get 2 million for him with 1 left on his contract. 1 year left on his contract.
I think we'll be doing well.
Then Dominguez isn't going anywhere because he's injured. Danilo we've already put in. Stamanic I don't think we're selling. I think, but loan.
He needs a Championship loan, I think.
Dennis.
Dennis, I think we're going to give it. We'll be giving him away. I don't think we'll get anything for Dennis.
Just give him for free to get him off the books.
I think it's free.
Saves us money. Because we're getting the wages and the amortization off our books, even if we give them away for free. Bowler, 100k?
Yeah, go on and lowball it so it's worst case scenario.
Right, bit of a loss on him. All right.
Tyrell's not going anywhere. No one's going to come in for Tyrell when he's just recovering from that injury.
He'll probably go, but we won't put him in. Jota, Sosa, I don't say for now, should we not put them in until we hear differently? Because they both apparently turned down a move.
I think you also have to factor in 2 other players, and that's Callum Hudson-Odoi, a bid's on the way from Napoli, apparently, from Conte, and Ola Aina. Now, by all accounts, the 1 year extension has been triggered, so he is our player for another year. But if he's not going to sign a longer contract, then do the club cash in on him now? Because ultimately, his value is going to go, isn't it? So,
okay. So before we get there, Greg, just highlighting what is getting rid of the deadwood, what is getting rid of the expired contracts, Danilo and Morgan Gibbs-White. If we don't sell anyone else, if we manage to keep hold of Callum and Ola and they sign contract extensions, again, that adds a bit of cost onto the bottom line. And I haven't put Morgan Gibbs-White's extra 3 million in here. But say we've got 5 million in lifts of contracts that come out. So that goes up to about 20 with the new contracts. We're still 90 million, which is 60 million above where we need to be. And that gives us about 60 million quid to play for new players that are coming in to scrape through PSR next year.
Is it what happens if you take Gibbs-White out of that though? What if we sell the fringe players but we don't sell Gibbs-White? Where do
Right,
we
Gibbs-White's
stick with
out.
that? 'Cause that's
There you
more
go.
like the option at the minute.
Before
you
you
go.
do,
So-
just before you do that, Raf, because that's the next part. What you're saying then, just to kind of summarise, that the Deadwood, Danilo, and Gibbs-White out the door, no one else, gives us about £60 million in this window to bring other players in, and that doesn't necessarily mean just
That's
just
not
tidy that up.
purchase
It
price.
doesn't mean
That's
spend.
not purchase price 60.
No, that's not
60
purchase
million
prices.
quid.
So that's because the value of the purchase price will be amortized over the contract. So what does that mean then in terms of how many players? What does 60 million in your balance sheet there allow us to do in terms of number of players coming in?
Right. So should we just take a Wisser, for example? Say he's 35 million quid. We put him on a 4-year contract and we pay them 60K a week, right? If we got players in around about that, we're not going to be shopping and, well, we might get one superstar that comes in, but that seems about reasonable. Say, oh, should I put him on a 5?
The problem you got now is Embremo. Embremo's on 50K at Brentford. He's going to Man United and he's demanding 250 a week, and they're going to give
that's Man United tax that's being paid, and Wisser's on half that. He's on 25.
We wouldn't pay 35 for Worcester.
He's not 24.
Fine. All I was trying to say was that might have a little bit of cause and effect with Wisser and maybe one or two others potentially.
But what I'm highlighting here is, on average, forget the name Wisser. If you're buying any player for 35 million quid, you put them on a 5-year contract and you offer them 60 grand in wages a week, that adds 10 million quid onto your annual P&L. So if you remember, I said, is Morgan Gibbs-White being sold? Yes, he is. Okay. So if Morgan Gibbs-White is being sold, that enables us to bring in 6 of those players on that type of thing. Now, we are kicking the can down the road because that goes up to about 84 and we've only put 40 back in. So we're going to have to sell another player. It's not sustainable year on year without then selling, but it gets us through next year and trying to win the conference, get up to UEFA, get some more prize money and hopefully balance things out.
The good news is we don't need 6 players worth 35 million quid. That's right. We need like 2, 3 at best, if that, and then a couple of lower cost ones. So
Dan's question was, if we take Gibbs-White off of that and we keep him, how does that affect our signing potential?
Right. So very, very, very quickly, and we'll adjust this as the window goes on very quickly. So say that's Wisser, and that'll be a 4-year contract, right? We need probably 2. If Callum Hudson-Odoi is not going, right? That's what we're theorizing at the moment. We need probably 1 winger that's at their level and 1 development winger. Okay. So 40 million quid for an Elanga-esque Callum Hudson-Odoi winger, 5-year contract, 100 grand. If we could get Kang for that, that would be epic, but it's probably going to be not him. If we got a development winger, this Rich was one of your gems that you found.
Yeah.
Potentially about 22 million quid, 5-year contract, 40K, right? Then we need a proper midfielder that needs to come in. And I'd say you're probably looking at that 35 million quid, 5-year. This person, Rich, you ID'd, was an absolute gem, but he'll probably have to be on about 80 grand a week. Okay. So that gives us our 8 to boost our midfield with Danny having gone. 2 wingers to give us proper depth. I do think, though, that means that Jota and Sosa are gone and we will get some money back in for that. Wisser up top. That leaves, if we got Cuiabano in, we do need another Nico-ish level, Aina-ish level fullback. That if we shot smart, which you found, I think, potentially, Rich, we might be able for 15 million quid, be able to get someone that's kind of at that level.
Okay.
Which you had for 15 million quid, 45 million. And the goalkeeper, Darlow, I haven't put in this costing, but it's not going to break the bank of someone like that. If we put all of those in, that brings up the cost to 60 million quid. Morgan Gibbs-White is not sold at the moment, but we need to find then if we imagine we've got 30 million quid, that brings up to 90 that we need to find, and we've got 50. So we need to find
you'd be
another
putting a
40
bit more
million
in.
quid.
You'd be putting a bit more in for either Jota, Sosa, or Hudson-Odoi, wouldn't you, to balance that out?
Yeah,
Because if you're bringing in
so
Kang-
what, Jota and Sosa, if we sold Jota and Sosa, what are we getting? So there were some bids that came in. Jota going to the Saudi would be about 15.
If he's going Saudi at 125,
Yeah,
Saudi
say
tax.
north of 20.
It's got to be Saudi tax involved. If Saudis are coming
20 to Saudi, Jota was what he was going for. Sosa was about what, 12 million euros? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it the bid? So say
Yeah.
10 million quid, right? We are still 20 million quid short.
Yeah. It's interesting because I know that you're plugged in really well, and you've got a really strong accounting background, and for the last 18 months or so you've been solely focused on sports finance and what that means. And so then for when Kieran Maguire goes on to Forest Fan TV telling Wolfie that we can spend nearly 100 million comfortably without any sales, I know that you push back a lot on that. We're really kind of up against the clock, but I'm going to give you a kind of right to reply on Kieran and his figures.
Kieran looks at all clubs. He's a Brighton fan, and he dips in and looks at what are in accounts. Okay, he looks historically at things, and historically gives you minus 18 months. I'm not going to bash Kieran right now. He provides a lot of value to the community, but I wouldn't say it is always in every single club at the most minute level of detail what is there. It's quite high level in some cases. Some of the graphs are not always spot on. So this has got a lot of assumptions, but the assumptions that I've been making have been pretty much validated by the expert that's now been brought on with a similar background to me to write for The Athletic. Was that just dropped today. So the assumptions that I'm making that's in a model that is being pushed out to the industry is what this information gives us. Plus the assumptions we've just made about players coming in, how much we can sell them for. So this is actually bottom up detail for really exactly where we are. Now, what this doesn't have in it though, is are we going to get increase in sponsorship deals, for example, bonus structures which change. There are lots of other intangibles, but this is just a base level changing in what is the primary driver of money in a football club, which is effectively how much you're buying and selling players for and how much you're paying them in wages.
Okay. We are going to have to end it because we've gone to 1 hour, 17 minutes. There's nearly 180 people in watching it. Do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. If you've not seen an episode from us before, we're really chuffed to bits that you've come and stayed with us and watched. Hopefully you'll come back and check out more. We're going to have more coming your way over the sort of close season in terms of transfers and spending and stuff like that, and trying to put our spin on it and our own take. But we encourage you, of course, as always, go and watch the other podcasts and Forest Fan TV and Forest Focus and Red Side and all the others as well, all doing really, really good stuff. And wherever we possibly can, we'll put our slant on it as well. Thank you so much to all of you for being in the comments and for watching and listening along. Going to say goodbye to Raf. Thank you, Raf. Danscape, as ever, absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate both of you. Richard Spray, my co-host, final word to you.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out. I mean, all of that was phenomenal, guys. Thank you so much for all the contributions because it was incredible to see. It's great to see some things visualized, right? We all like visualization, but I was going to quick shout out to the Wicklows. Adam, as you guys know, is on Red Side of the Trent, does a great job hosting Red Side of the Trent the majority of the time. Like Greg mentioned, they did a great work with a fan from Botafogo, but he's going through some things right now, especially his wife, Emma. She has a brain tumor. So please be thinking about her and about that family. And they have we have opportunity to donate to them. So we'll put that link out for you guys to donate to help support them. But they're amazing people. And so I just want to give a quick shout out and our love from Talking Reds to the Wicklows. So get well, Emma. And if we can do anything, we're here for you.
Yeah, we echo that. There's a charity football match that Red Side are doing. I think it's on Sunday. I think that's right.
Yeah.
There's also the Just Giving page. So go to Red Side of the Trent and you'll find the Just Giving details there. We'll chuck it into the bio for this episode as well. £5, £10, whatever you can give. It's towards a worthy cause that Adam's trying to raise money. Emma's got this brain tumor. I think surgery's already taken place. And she's now in the process of undergoing chemo and radiotherapy and stuff like that, which is not fun at all. So our love, prayer, support go to Emma, to Adam, to the whole Red Side of the Trent family. And we hope you will put your hand in your pocket and help those guys and support the cause. Before I go, I've got to say, Anthony Gale, thank you so much for the $5. Raf bringing the heat. Absolutely. Thank you, gents, he says. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We will hopefully be back again soon. It's a bit difficult at the moment to try and get loads of stuff out. But like I said before, all the pods are doing stuff. Go and watch everyone else. We'll chip in along the way. Okay, so wherever you get your Forest fix, we hope you enjoy it. We'll see you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.